Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Along with Vincent Turner and Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, I am Harper LeBel, and today we're going to go over our Super 7 for week number 10. Believe it, it's already there. The season, now that we're getting at the end of October, about a month left. Some teams have 4 games, some teams with the bye have 3. But last week, a lot of great action, some changes in the polls, some teams that you thought would do well actually did. There were some challenging games, and guess what? For the rest of the season, we're going to see a tremendous amount of improvement and increase in the intensity level as conference championships. We get one step closer each and every day. Vincent, we're going to talk about our local games first. On Wednesday, later tonight, Kennesaw State will be playing at Western Kentucky. That game is at 7:30. It'll be on ESPN2, a chance for Kennesaw State 2 weeks in a row now that they've played in midweek games. After this week, they will have this Saturday off, and they won't play again until next Saturday. But Kennesaw State getting a chance after that big win against Liberty to go against Western Kentucky, On Friday, I know a little bit about this one. UConn up in Connecticut will be at Pratt & Whitney Field. Will be taking on Georgia State. That game starts at 7 on the CBS Sports Network. And then Saturday, full slate of games that will be taking place. We're going to miss that first one just for a second. But Georgia Southern will be at South Alabama in Mobile. That game's at 7 o'clock. Eastern Tennessee State University, they will be at Mercer. That game is at 3 o'clock on Saturday. Lincoln from California will be at West Georgia. The Wolves will be a host at 2 o'clock. That game on ESPN+. And Chowan State against Valdosta State. Valdosta State, the number 1 team in Division II in the country right now. So go Blazers. Their game is at 3 o'clock. It is also on ESPN2. Georgia Tech has a bye this week, so that leaves us with one game that we're going to talk about. Vincent, give us your thoughts about the big cocktail party. What's going to be going on in Jacksonville, Florida, between the Gators, who will be the visitors against the University of Georgia, and their number 2 ranking.
Special time of year when you talk about the Florida-Georgia game. It brings back memories all the time of the 1980 game. Remember, we had Buck Bellew on our show a couple of months ago, and he talked about that game glowingly, how that game ended up in Georgia won the national championship that season on that 92-yard touchdown pass to Lindsey Scott. But I'm going to say this. When you look at that, the teams now, they're totally different. Georgia is playing for a serious college football playoff spot. They got to continue to keep winning. They're the better team. Carson Beck, I've been hearing a lot out of the Bulldogs camp that he's been struggling a lot. He hasn't played up to his abilities. But I tell you what, go back 2 weeks ago when I said Georgia was the best team in the country. And why did I say that? Because they play defense. And to me, we talk about Mikael Williams on the defensive side of the ball of Georgia. We talk about Malachi Sparks. But Jalon Walker, remember that name. To me, he's the best defensive player in the country. Now to the Florida Gators. Billy Napier, man, this is a start of some very tough games to end the season for you as a Florida Gators coach. You got an outstanding freshman quarterback in DJ Legway. But I'm going to tell you this, Mr. Billy Napier, and I like you, Billy, but I'm going to tell you this. If you don't end the season on a good note, as my man, the lead host, the handsome Harper LeBel says, the Gators are going to be looking for some new head coaching blood at the end of the season. But the Dogs are going to win big in this game on Saturday. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, Billy wins this ball game. If he does, and the Florida Gators pull what would be an upset. And think of how many years that Florida technically owned the series. Not just one specific game, but the series itself over a period of 5 or 6 years, 8 to 10 years, they would win consistently. And this was a big part of the success that Florida had for quite a while. The tables have turned, and now it seems that Georgia is the one that's in control in the direction of their program. As you mentioned, Vincent, getting to the college playoff, it will go through Jacksonville, and you have to get a win. The University of Georgia Bulldogs do. I agree with you. I think they will win this game. I think they're a much better team. But let's look also at some of the other games that will be taking place this weekend. We call it the Super 7. We pick 7 games. They're not always the ones that you may be watching first and foremost, but they're games that have got our attention. And we start with the first one at noon on Saturday. That game will be on Fox, and it's between the number 4 Ohio State Buckeyes and the number 3 Penn State Nittany Lions. I would think right now to have that game at home will mean more to Penn State than maybe any other home game that they've had in the recent past, because if they beat Ohio State, Vincent, I think the table will turn in the Big Ten for quite a while. They've always been finishing second or third, and the Ohio State-Michigan game seems to always be more important. But this one, to me, if I'm a Nittany Lion fan, you win this ball game, you stay undefeated. Everything is smooth sailing throughout the rest of the year for you.
What I call is they playing a game in Happy Valley. I call this expectations game. I'm going to start with Ohio State. Ohio State struggled last week against Nebraska. They lost their most important player, Josh Simmons. They left tackle went out of that game and had a season, I believe, knee injury. The offense for Ohio State struggled last week against Nebraska. Let's make this point very clear today on 100 Yards Football. Ryan Day, is it a bust or championship this year at Ohio State? Because remember, I said early in the season, there was people out there saying Ohio State had the best roster in the country. Now to my man, James Franklin. You've been there 10 years. You've been saying that you want to take Penn State to another level. You've taken them to another level, but what you haven't done, you haven't beat the Ohio States of the world. You haven't beat the Michigans of the world. You got everything going for you. You got your home field. But one key question is Drew Aller, your star quarterback, is he going to be healthy? Because he got hurt last week and he did not play. So my thing is this. I call it the expectations game. The team that loses this game, you better believe the alumni is going to come with the heat. Back to you, Harper.
I'm telling you right now, I think you're right. Absolutely. Even though they're 7-0 and undefeated, if Penn State loses this game, I mean, they're going to be upset regardless, but will they have a reason to be more upset than per usual? I don't know. Here's what they do well. Penn State can score 34 points per game. That's 28th in the country. They do even better, play defense. They've only given up 14 points. That's 8th in the country. You would think that's good enough, right? Well, when you look at Ohio State, they're averaging 40 points a game, and they're only giving up 11. They're 4th in the country when it comes to defense. Watch for fewer points than normal, in my opinion, in this ball game, especially in the first half. They'll be feeling each other out and trying to figure out what on earth we need to do in order to be able to score, especially if you've got injuries in here and you got kids that are a little bit nervous playing in their first really big game of the season. But it should be a fantastic game. It's at noon on Saturday. Our next game will be number 19 Mississippi and their 6-2 record. They will be traveling Pig Suey to Arkansas. I like Arkansas. They've done some really good things this year, but they're 5-3. They're close, but they need to win a game like this in order to be relevant.
I'm going to say this. Sam Pittman, your job was on the line when the season first started. Up there in Fayetteville, they was calling for your head. But I got to say, being a proud Arkansas alum, I'm glad what you've done this year. Being 5-3, I did not see the Arkansas Razorbacks being 5-3 this year. Caleb Green has played outstanding. And when I think about the Arkansas Razorbacks taking on Ole Miss, I think about the days back when Arkansas played Ole Miss. My last year, 1981, the last year I was in Fayetteville, Arkansas, Ole Miss was ranked, Arkansas was ranked. Arkansas had Billy Ray Smith, Gary Anderson, Danny Walters. Ole Miss had John Forcade, Barry Wilburn, and Lee Davis. You know what happened in that football game? Danny Walters took a fourth quarter interception, 87 yards to the house. So that being said, Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels, y'all in the college playoff football discussion. But however, if you slip up there on the hill, as we call it in Fayetteville, Arkansas, you will be eliminated from the college football playoffs. And Archie Manning is going to be highly upset. Famous Ole Miss alum. Back to you, Harper.
You think Eli will be mad too? He might be.
Yes, sir.
Eli might be. Here's what you don't think of it maybe. Well, I haven't. I didn't realize the number one team defensively in the nation who gives up the fewest points, Ole Miss Rebels. They're number one. They average 11 points. They're scoring 39 points a ball game. So the differential is amazing. They're 14th in the country when it comes to that. Jackson Dart, the senior from Kaysville, Utah. I did not know that they produce great quarterbacks in Kaysville, Utah, but he ends up with the Rebels right now. They're fourth in the nation, averaging 354 yards in the air. He has 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. His quarterback rating is 91. He's having a fantastic year, folks. Keep your eyes on him. Jackson Dart. Also, Henry Parrish, 120 carries, 656 yards so far. He's averaging 5.5 yards every time he touches the ball. He's got 10 touchdowns. They average at 184 yards a game right now, but they're, as a team, they've got over 1,400 yards on the ground. Ole Miss can play football now, and this ought to be a really good game for them on the road to try to establish themselves so that they can be in perfect positions for the SEC finals and being a part of some championship game where they might be able to be invited into the playoff. That would be awesome. We're going to go, the next game will be at Illinois in Champaign at Memorial Stadium. The 6-2, number 24th ranked Illini will be hosting the Minnesota Golden Gophers at 5-3 right now. Minnesota can play defense as well. They average 16 points a game right now, Vincent. They're number 16 in the country in terms of the amount of points that they give up, but they can also score. They've got a senior named Max Boschmer, who's from Roswell, Georgia here. He's had 12 touchdowns and 4 interceptions right now. He's got 1,776 yards from his passing attack, but they can also run the ball. Don't be surprised if the Golden Gophers put it on the ground. 7 touchdowns from Darius Taylor. They are a force to be reckoned with. And if I'm part of the alumni of the Illinois alumni, the Fighting Illini, I would certainly be worried right now about whether or not the Golden Gophers come into town and pull an upset.
PJ Fleck, Minnesota. Y'all had a big win last week over Maryland, 48-23. And I know Tony Dungy and Rick Upchurch had smiles on their face. Yes, I'm going to say this. PJ Fleck has done a very good, solid job in Minnesota years he's been there. I thought he would move on and have a bigger time college football job. Honestly, I thought he'd be down here in the South coaching somewhere like at Auburn in Florida. I'm not throwing his name out there, but that's a good football coach. Illinois, you let me down, baby. You let me down. Luke Atmar from Stockville, Mississippi. Y'all went into Oregon last week, man, and I was going for y'all, man. But you end up getting dominated 38-9. This is a big football game, man. You're 6-2 on the year. Minnesota comes in 5-3. You win this game, Illinois, you might be going to a good bowl game. Back to you, Harper.
Well, we got a bunch of great football taking place, but the Mid-America Conference, how about that? We're going to talk about Toledo and Eastern Michigan right now. When's the last time we did that? Toledo is at 5-3. Eastern Michigan also at 5-3. This game right here, I give that a little bit of interest, a little love to the conference. Some teams like Akron and Western and Central Michigan, but Eastern Michigan right now at 5-3 will be hosting Toledo. Tucker Gleason, he is their quarterback right there at Toledo. He averages 262 yards a ball game in the air. They're averaging 31 points, which is in the top 50 in the nation. Defensively, they only give up 21. That's 43rd in the nation. Toledo, the Rockets, they can play. But Eastern also is able to throw the ball quite well, 243 yards a ball game. Corey Snyder he's at 1,822 yards right now. What impresses me is that he's got 9 touchdowns. He does have 4 interceptions, but he's been sacked 23 times. He needs to be able to depend on his offensive line a little bit better if the Eastern Michigan folks are they going to win this ball game here. Your thoughts, Vincent?
Toledo, Mid-American Conference. We got to give some love to everybody across the country. Chuck Early, quarterback, 1969 to 1971, and one Nick Saban used to be the head coach. You brought up a good point about Toledo, Mr. Harper. Tucker Gleason is a very good quarterback. Eastern Michigan. Now, a lot of people don't think Eastern Michigan has, I wouldn't say football tradition, but they did have one, L.J. Shelton, that played in the league. T.J. Lane that played in the league. Charlie Batch that played in the league. And they
Yep.
got one of the baddest men right now playing on a high level, one of the best defensive ends in the game, Max Crosby. And like you said, Harper, Cole Snyder's a very good football player. This is for the battle who's going to be at top of the Mid-American Conference after this weekend. Two very good football teams, Toledo and Eastern Michigan.
Look at Delbert Mims if you get a chance for Eastern Michigan. 132 carries. He's got 540 yards. He's got 7 touchdowns. As a team, they have 14 touchdowns on the ground. I mentioned the sacks. They're probably not going to try as deeply as they have in the past to go for the big play on offense through the air when you got a guy like Delbert. He's 5'11", 220 pounds. He's a fire hydrant, man. He's a senior from Indianapolis. Watch for Delbert Mills. Big game that they have that they're hosting there at Eastern Michigan. And the next game that we have on the list, someone here, Vincent, someone, I can't think of who, is really going to be interested in this week's game where the Tigers go to the University of Texas, San Antonio. The Roadrunners are 3-5. This game will be at noon at the Alamo Dome. 7-1. What could be better if you're a Memphis Tiger right now?
Man, if we wouldn't have lost the Navy, where would we be at? We'd be undefeated. I'm going to throw some dates out there to you, Harper, right quick. February the 23rd to March 6th. 1836, the Battle of the Alamo. One of the greatest battles in the state of Texas, and they had a Tennessean who died in that battle by the name of Davy Crockett. Well, the Memphis Tigers, what more can I say? Proud of my home city school. They're 7-1 on the year. I just hated that they lost the Navy because right now they'd be in a college football playoff discussion. Ryan Silverfield has did an outstanding job. But I'm going to tell you people down there in Memphis, Tennessee, go to the games. Go to the games. You have a good team. I'm disappointed of you. You're embarrassing me on 100 yards of football. Go Tigers.
Seth Hennigan, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. More importantly, there's a guy named Mario Anderson Jr. He's 5'9", he's 208. He has 13 touchdowns. The team has 22 right now. He's got 780 yards. Go watch that man play. Go see him in person. What a difference he's going to make. 13 touchdowns? You got to be kidding me. 168 yards is what they average. They're 56th in the nation. You know, that's right in the middle of the pack. They score 34 points a game, and they only give up 20. The Memphis Tigers can play ball right now, and they are very good. And I agree with what Vincent said. You got to go watch these guys play. Head on out. You don't need to watch this game on television. Go and see it. Roadrunners are struggling right now. Owen McCown, 61% of his passes are complete. He's got 2,084 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but they're 3-5. They can't stop anybody. They give up 32 points a game. That's 115th in the nation right now. If they can improve that, get a little better play out of their defensive line, linebackers in the secondary, they got a chance. They score 30, but they give up 32. So interesting game. Memphis might be 8-1. We certainly hope for Vincent's sake that he'll be a happy man next week. But they've got to go to the Alamo Dome and play against the University of Texas San Antonio Roadrunners before they get there. Next game we have will feature the number 1 team in the nation. Oregon and the Ducks will be headed to Michigan for the first time. Oregon at 6-1 will be taking on 5-3 Michigan at Michigan Stadium. Your thoughts, Vincent?
Oregon is the number 1 team in the country. We'll talk about a lot of great football players this season. Carson Beck down here south, Jalen Merrill, Travis Hunter, and Shedeur Sanders. But I think today on 100 Yards Football, we need to give some love to the man from Hawaii 5-0, from the state of Hawaii, Dylan Gabriel. He's played pretty good football the last few weeks for the Oregon Ducks, quack. And he was outstanding against Ohio State. See, when you talk about football players, and I know we can talk about Shedeur Sanders, we can talk about Travis Hunter, we can talk about Carson Beck. But for me, and this is what me and my business partner, Ronnie Keebler, always say, what do you do when the money is at stake? The chips are sky high. That's when you know what type of player you have. And Dylan Gabriel, even though he's not got the numbers like a lot of other players in the country, but I'm going to tell you this, if Oregon continues to go undefeated in the Big Ten, he needs to be in New York at the ceremony. You know I'm talking about the Heisman Trophy. Yep. Now over to Michigan. Shamon Moore, I'm not going to be hard on you this year, brother, because we knew what was coming in Michigan. You lost, about 18 players to the NFL draft. You lost your quarterback, J.J. McCartney, who was the first overall, was a 12 pick in the first round. Michigan lost a lot of players. And you haven't really played bad football this year. You had some very tough losses against Texas and Washington. But you need to get the quarterback play straight if you're going to end the year on a good note. Davis Warren last week had 123 yards through the air and 1 touchdown against Michigan State. That's not going to happen. That's not going to work for you, Wolverines. To the Michigan Nation, you playing Oregon that can score points. Back to you, Harper.
130. That number appears in the same stat 2 times for the University of Michigan. They average 130 yards in the air every week, and they rank 130. I didn't even know they had 130. I thought there were 126 teams. Michigan is down near the bottom of the pack. Not the same team as last year, but that means to me that they're going to rely on their running game. And if they're going to do that, that means Khalil Mullings. He's averaging 4.6 yards a game. He's got 123 carries for 694 yards, 7 touchdowns. They're going to have to be able to run the ball because they haven't figured out their quarterback issue yet. You mentioned Davis Warren. They've got Jack Tuttle. They've got Alex Orji. Together, the 3 of them have 7 touchdowns in the air, but 9 interceptions. So it has to change for Michigan for them to have a chance. In the meanwhile, the number 1 team in the nation, you mentioned Dylan Gabriel. Let's look at some of his numbers. 76% of his passes he completes. He's at 2,371 yards right now, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And in his 253 pass attempts that he's had, 253, he's been sacked 10 times. Thank you, offensive line. Thank you, tight end. Thank you, running back, for protecting me and doing the job that you're supposed to so I can get the ball down the field. Don't be surprised if they rush the ball. Oregon has 16 rushing touchdowns this year to their 18 receptions. Tez Johnson, we've talked about him a little bit. He'll be recruited quite heavily in the upcoming draft. He has 8 of those 18 touchdowns in the air. So Oregon going to Michigan in a big game. That will be at 3:30 on CBS. Final game we're going to look at today. We're going to look at a little bit of the Big 12 action. Texas Tech at 5-3. The Red Raiders bring that record into number 11, Iowa State. Think about it. Iowa State is undefeated right now, Vincent, and for the first time in years, they're 7-0. So Jack Trice Stadium at 3:30 is going to be rocking on ESPN.
Kudos to Matt Campbell, Iowa State. Dave Archer might be walking through them doors. Matt Blair might be walking through them doors.
Yep.
They got it going on in Ames. Rocco Beckett. He's a player that people don't talk about. The quarterback, he's pretty good. Troy Davis might be walking through them doors. This is an Iowa State team. They're 11-0, man. This is a big game for them. They keep Tennessee winning. College football playoffs looking good for the Iowa State Cyclones. And I want to give credit to Matt Campbell. A couple of years ago, remember he was the hottest name in college football, and then Iowa State kind of took a dove, and then he kind of came on some criticism. Now he's back as being that hot name on the college football level. Now to Texas Tech, guns up. Patrick Mahomes, Gay Rivera. They're not going to walk through them doors down in Ames on Saturday. Mr. B. Morton, the starting quarterback, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the country, is hurt right now. They don't know if he's going to be able to go or not. Will Hammond came in and did an outstanding job last week. They lost to TCU 35-34 in a very close football game, but this is a Texas Tech team that can score points. Guns up, Patrick Mahomes. Back to you, Harper.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They average 288 yards through the air. That's 19th in the country right now. 38 points. That's 16th in the country. Their problem, they just can't stop anybody. They give up 36 points a game. That's 123rd. I mentioned how bad Michigan was at 130th, 123. I think Iowa State is going to fall into a situation. I'll use this example. Sometimes the sum is better than the individual parts. Iowa State is 48th in passing. They're 37th in rushing. They're 45th in scoring, but they're number 9 in defense, in points given up at 14 right now. What's the stat that I have? They have 12 interceptions. They've got 12 interceptions. If you make a mistake against Iowa State, they'll make you pay for it. Their offense is good. We talked about the scoring power that they have right there. Watch out for a little guy named, he's nothing little about him, Chris Hansen. 6'2", 230 pounds. He's only a sophomore, but he's got 7 rushing touchdowns. Why? Because he's 6'2" and he's 220. Give the man the ball, especially if you're in the red zone. He'll score for you. 16 rushing touchdowns, 11 passing touchdowns. Iowa State is a team that, on average, when you look at it, there's not a whole lot impressive other than the defense that I mentioned. But, man, when they put it all together and they play, they put their helmets on, they strap it up right after the national anthem, they turn into monsters. They turn into Cyclones. So be impressed with Iowa State. They're number 11 for a reason, and they could move up in the polls should they win this game. Vincent, final thoughts on an exciting week, number 10 here in the NCAA.
Real short and sweet. Week 10, all eyes are up there in State College where they played at Penn State, right? Happy Valley,
Penn State. Yep.
Ohio State, and Penn State.
Beaver Stadium.
Game of the day. Coaches I'm looking at. Ohio State wins that football game. The heat comes off Ryan Day. Penn State. This is the game that James Franklin, I said before the season started, these are the games he has to win. Very critical if Drew Aller is ready to go and play on Saturday. That's the biggest game of the day. The Buckeyes against the Nittany Lions. What I'm going to be looking for, which team loses, how that heat going to come on that coach, whether it's going to be Ryan Day or James Franklin. Back to you, Hawk.
Yep, lots of big games this weekend, and there will be throughout the rest of the season, and we're going to bring them all to you. Right now, we've got Week 10 in the book, at least for our show. We want to thank you for tuning in. This has been 100 Yards of Football, along with Vincent Turner and our producer, Logan Landers. We want to thank you for being a part of the show, and we'll have more for you next week on another big week of college excitement that is ready for everybody to be a part of. It's a little bit different this year. Bigger games, more important games, less of those cupcake games. The bye weeks are going to start disappearing as we go later on in the season. We're going to see a lot of great teams get a chance to play. But until then, again, this is Harper LeBel for Vincent Turner. Thank you so much for watching 100 Yards of Football, the College Super 7 edition.